Today's topic, should you switch from HoneyBook Original Automations to 2.0, is brought to you by a random story that I saw from a follower. She posted in her stories that, it was very time consuming or very irritating to have to chase down, invoices for payments and send people reminders that they owed you money. And so very cheekily, I sent her a DM that said, automate that shit and forget about it. Now, before some of you are like, oh my God, like you just DM'd her, she follows me. She is on my email list, and we have had quite a few DM conversations in the past. I do think that my advice was welcome. I do not randomly cold DM people just because of what you post on Instagram. Okay, that's my little, hey, don't come at me for today. But she immediately said, well, there are some automations and triggers that are still missing that I want before I switch. So of course I sent her a very short voice message and said, what triggers? So she said that she was waiting on HoneyBook to release triggers that you could use based on a session or a project date. And as this is something that I am very familiar with, the first 3 people to join systems and sessions were all. And this is a topic that I'm pretty familiar with and I'm currently in the weeds with, because my new Done With You program, Systems in Session, has 5 people currently in beta, and the first 3 that joined were all HoneyBook users. So I have been living and breathing HoneyBook Automation 2.0 for like the last couple months. And what I wanted to make sure that this person understood was, number 1, I don't know that they're going to give us that trigger. But number 2, there's already a way that you can do this as a workaround. So, I sent her my response back and she said, I'm going into busy season and I've already screenshot my old automations so that I could create, I could replicate them in Automations 2.0. And that was when I realized I should probably hop on here and record a podcast episode, because you taking screenshots of your original automations is not going to allow you to directly translate them into 2.0. I feel like 2.0 was built and designed in a very different way than automations, the original. And most specific, where you can tell that this is true, is because they took away the trigger, do this 2 weeks before the project date. We don't have that kind of internal automation inside of HoneyBook any longer. That is now a trigger that you can use to start a new automation. But inside of an actual automation, there is no more do this X days, X weeks, X months before or after a project date. And so anything that you were doing, like let's say inside of your bigger onboarding automation in the original automations, you are not going to be able to take that one perhaps longish automation and create a new one inside of Automation 2.0 and just use the new triggers. Like it requires you to design your client experience and the automations that power it in a very different way than you were originally. Now, I'm also going to say this. I have had Automation 2.0 since the week of Halloween. So at the time of this recording, we are going on almost 8-9 months. And while I was really excited when I got Automation 2.0 and I told all of the people in the CRM Blueprint, the HoneyBook edition, hey, I'm going to make you guys some videos that shows you how to use it. Y'all, it took me 4.5 months to make them videos. Why? Because when Automation 2.0 came out, I did really think that it was missing key features that made it to where I couldn't recommend that anybody switched initially. Most important that was missing was the ability to trigger an automation manually. There was no way for you to go into someone's project and just say, hey, I want to start the onboarding process. Maybe they didn't book through a smart file. Maybe they were already your client inside of a different CRM and you manually added them, but you couldn't manually trigger a workflow. And until you can do that, I wasn't recommending that anybody switch over. The second biggest thing that was missing for me that they gave us in February of 2025, and that's why I started making videos and telling my students that it was okay to make the switch, was you couldn't create any email drafts inside of the automations when they first were released at the end of 2024. So any email or any file that you sent with an email inside of the automation could not be altered, changed, or deleted when Automations 2.0 first came out. Like, you put it in there and it was basically an all or nothing. Could you add an approval button like you had in the original automations? Yes. But now you could no longer edit that email if it had an approval. Now, at the beginning of 2025, HoneyBook gave us email draft as one of the actions that you can have inside of an automation. So now if there is an email that, like, let's say 80% of it can be templatized, but you still need to like sprinkle on that 20% of personalization, you can now do that in Automation 2.0 as long as you have added it to the automation as an email draft. Now, while I commend them for doing this and I am happy, the problem is that doesn't extend to when you're sending a smart file. So if you are sending, let's say, the booking file, the 5-minute booking process that I talk about in podcast episodes, on my YouTube channel, in emails, if you want to be able to do that and you're sending it through an automation, which I highly recommend, you cannot edit that email. You attach an email to send the form, and you can add an approval button so that you're sending it or perhaps not sending it, but you can't change that email that goes with it. So while you can add drafts for single emails, you still cannot, identify or label something as a draft if it is sending a smart file through an automation. Now, that is still one of my biggest pet peeves for Automation 2.0. Is it stopping me from recommending that HoneyBook users switch from original automations into 2.0? Now it's not. I feel like the benefits of what else they have built in 2.0 they do now outweigh what you lose when you switch. So, let's talk about this a little bit more. The biggest thing that you get in Automation 2.0 is conditional logic. And for those of you that are, not familiar with what conditional logic is, it is basically you can identify an action that you want your lead or client to do. Let's say, for example, scheduling a consultation call. Let's say that you send them a scheduler and you're like, hey, I would love to hear more about your wedding day or, your pregnancy. Please schedule this consultation call so that we can make sure that we are a good fit for each other. In original automations, you sent that scheduler and there was no way for you to automatically follow up. You could create a to-do for yourself, like, hey, it's been 3 days, let's check back in with so-and-so. You could do that, but there wasn't any kind of action or trigger that was related to them not scheduling the call. But now in Automation 2.0, you can add a conditional step and tell it what to watch. So in this case, it would be, is there a session scheduled? And you can either make it any kind of session, a specific kind of session, which is what you would do here. You're really looking to see if they scheduled that consultation call. And then you have 2 options. If they scheduled the call, you can do this. If they didn't schedule the call, you can do this. And you can identify whatever, amount of time it is that you want HoneyBook to wait until it applies or, identifies it as a no. So in the case of a consultation call, let's say 2 days. If you put a conditional step, wait 2 days. If a call has been scheduled, do this. If a call has not been scheduled, do this. Perfect. To me, this kind of additional logic, this kind of automatic follow-up is absolutely needed for those of us who don't have time to babysit our inbox. We don't have time to wait and check on their automations and constantly check on their project to see if they've scheduled the call or, booked your services or whatever action it is that we want to watch. Now, this does mean that there is a little bit of a nuance now, and it's partly why you don't have a please do this X days before a project date. Those are no longer in the automations because the way that you time an automation is different. You have 2 different ways to time an automation and the actions and triggers within that same automation. It's either an automatic wait this amount of time, period, or it's a wait this amount of time, see if this action was taken, and then do this if it has, or do this if it hasn't. So the way that you time your automations is very different now than what you did in the original automation builder. But again, in my opinion, having that conditional step to automatically follow up with people who haven't taken action is amazing. It's the reason that when people would come to me and be like, okay, Coley, like I know that you say, you can use Dubsado or you can use HoneyBook, but really which one is your favorite? For the longest, the whole automatic follow-up when someone doesn't book your services, which I have multiple podcast episodes about this, but when you couldn't automatically follow up, that for me was the number one thing that kept me saying, no, I prefer the Dubsado workflows, simply so that you can have that automatic follow-up on the fact that you've sent a booking proposal and did they actually book. Now, not only can you do that in HoneyBook, but you can also do it for schedulers as well. And I'm not just talking about a consultation call. If you are someone who does consultation calls, planning calls, IPS calls, reveal calls, like any kind of call that you can think of, you can now automatically follow up with your clients if they have not scheduled that call. Okay. So I know that I've thrown a lot at you. And to be honest, if you're not a HoneyBook user or you don't want to think about using HoneyBook, this podcast episode was probably useless, and I should probably go back and add a little disclaimer at the beginning. But just wanted to let you know that because I am getting these kinds of questions of, well, is it time for me to switch to Automation 2.0? In my humble opinion, the answer is an absolute yes. Now, if you're not on my email list, I highly recommend that you get on there, because every time that there's like a new feature or, there's something else that I want to talk about related to Automation 2.0, I do send it to my email list. So if you're not on there, go to coleyjames.com/subscribe. The second thing that I want to tell you about is a new done for you offer that released today, and it is called Workflow FastPass. This is an AI powered offer where you will fill out an intake form answering some questions about your offer and what you want your customer journey to be. It is going to go through my custom GPT to build out custom designed workflows for you. And then it is going to have my human systems strategist eyes on it to make sure that everything is exactly as it should be and any red flags are resolved before I send it to you for implementation. So if you are someone who is a HoneyBook user and you would like to switch over to Automation 2.0 and you just don't have the time or the bandwidth to figure it all out, this is probably for you. So go to coleyjames.com/automation to hear all about the Workflow FastPass. Okay. And as you guys know, my DMs on Instagram at coleyjames are always open to discuss workflows and automations, because they are what powers your entire rave-worthy client experience and gives you the consistency and peace of mind that we all need as business owners. Okay, that's it for this episode. See you next time.